Okay, welcome to Theorycraft, a live podcast where game developers and their players engage in conversation every week on Discord, except for the weeks where we don't do it. And it has been a few weeks since we've done it, but it's good to be back. Most significantly, I just want to kick off the news section with an announcement. I've started a game development studio with several of my ex-Blizzard colleagues named Infamous Studios. And yeah, we're really looking forward to creating the next generation of virtual worlds. So, Chris, do you have anything to share, or what's up with you?
Yes. Infamous. Yeah, I should have thought about that name. That sounds good. Yeah, so like you're alluding to, I've finally been able to talk about what I've been working on the last, gosh, I don't know. I guess since I left Blizzard, like in October. So it's been kind of a road of soul searching and thinking about what to do next, and then researching and meeting new people and learning about a whole nother industry and all these other things. So it's been a wild journey, and I'm really excited to finally be announced and have it all out there. Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
So, can you breathe a sigh of relief now that we all know about it, or how does it feel to be on day two of the post public life?
Yeah, I mean it's crazy because yesterday, yeah, we announced yesterday. All right, was it yesterday? What is today? Tuesday? It's today's Wednesday. Yeah, it was on Monday. Monday we announced. Yeah, and so we already have like 200 applicants that I'm sifting through
Oh wow!
for potential hires. Yeah, and yeah, we got like I think there's like 30,000 views on the YouTube video and a couple thousand followers and subscribers and stuff. So it's great. I'm really happy with the response, and so many people and colleagues and friends and guild mates from my the guild that's named after reached out, and it's just really surreal and cool. So
Yeah. Does it like? I mean, I guess everything is going to feel new every single time, but I just have to imagine that like the realization that holy hell, I'm running a business now and I've fully stepped into this world must just hit you all the time. Like every day that you go in and see your employees and with every decision you make, because I don't know. I mean, I've known about you planning to do this for a little bit, and I've just been continually impressed at the amount of what I want to say, your like transitional period that you kind of put into it in terms of research and steeping yourself in the entire culture of having to start something from the ground up. I guess I'm
mhm.
saying that because if you work in games, I feel like everybody at some point has just been shooting the shit with their buddies and thought like, man, we should just go start a studio. And I know I've had that conversation with, several of my friends many, many times. And none of us ever have, because starting a company is fucking hard work. And no one really wants to no one really wants to do it. I think everybody suspects that like it's going to be a tremendous amount of legwork for everybody who gets going, to not feel like they're putting their livelihood on the line, and they're not in good hands. So, I mean, obviously, I guess, are you working as a game designer on the project? I'm guessing.
Uh,
Do you
yeah,
know?
I mean it's like it's I mean it's seriously like so many different hats. Like one,
Right.
I mean, when I first did it, I was like, well, I could be kind of, I can help recruit, I can build our website, I can design the game, I can direct the game, I can do the combat system, I can do all these things, and it's just like, man, it's just so much endless work, and I love it because I do love just being busy and having a lot of things to do and learning new things. But yeah, I mean, I am working as a designer on the project and coming up with the gameplay and vision for the game and stuff like that. And originally the idea for the game is something that I came up with and pitched to the investors, and that's kind of what excited them.
Mm-hmm.
Was this vision of the game? But recently, like I designed the website, and I mentioned I'm managing, trying to figure out sifting through the different applicants. So I'm kind of like HR in that sense. And yesterday I was kind of on Twitter and manage talking to players and interacting and engaging there. So I'm kind of like a social media manager. It's just like it's all these different things, and so for now, because once we scale up and grow, of course we'll hire people who are specialists in these areas. But it's exciting. I think it's good to try to do it yourself in the beginning, because then you kind of learn what, like, let's say you hire a social media manager or something. If you try doing it yourself, you kind of understand how it works and like how that job works, so that when you interview someone, you know what they'll be doing. Because it's kind of scary when you're interviewing somebody and you don't even know what they do all day, and like what makes a good, say, social media manager or animator or whatever the position is. So, but yeah, there's just like so much to talk about and deconstruct with the whole journey. But it is surreal. Like every day, I mean, we recently got, and in the video that I announced with, you could see the sign in the background, but it's just kind of surreal to see a
Hmm.
sign, a physical thing for the company with the logo. Um, and it's also kind of a name of my WoW guild that I was like a teenager in, that I created. Like we're in some random like house or building inside Ironforge trying to jam up ideas for a guild name, and Notorious is the one we chose. And that was like the genesis basically of that guild of 17 years, which is now the company. So it's just a crazy surreal thing.
Yeah, yeah. It feels very much like a through line for your life. I have to imagine, not to put too much stress or responsibility on you. I'm just like, man, it's so fucking cool that this is finally a tangible thing that you can look at and talk about. And yeah, well, I mean, I'm really excited for any news as we get it, as I'm sure everybody is. Maybe we can circle back to a little bit more about game dev and Noto, but I wanted to ask Candace about her situation. It's been a few weeks, and you've moved. You're in LA. You
Yeah.
bid Orange County goodbye, finally.
Yeah, it has been one hell of a move too. I didn't expect it to take 10 hours, but it did. And I swear it's because these apartments I moved into have this elevator that is the slowest elevator on the planet. It took them 2.5 hours to pack the truck up with everything I own, but I left a lot of stuff in the place for the person who's going to move in because they don't have a lot of furniture. And that's okay because I was going to get new furniture, but it still took them 5 hours to unload the truck. And I wouldn't say like they built the bed, which is really nice, and they built my desk, which is really nice, but most of it wasn't Tetrising stuff in the house or unpacking or anything. It was just that's how long it took for them to take all of my stuff from the truck and up the elevator to my apartment. So it was just really stressful. It ended up being a fucking $2,500, which I was expecting half of that for the move because a
Mm,
lot of people quoted me $1,200 for a flat fee, and I was like, flat fee is scary to me because I feel like if the job does go long, then the workers, they're getting paid the same amount anyways, and so they're not as invested in the success of the move. But then after you go after 8 hours, you have to pay people time and a half, which Chris is going to have to know about pretty soon here. But it was
Yeah.
worth it. It was worth it to make sure everybody was got their fair share. They didn't complain one bit. They were so good to me. I'm so lucky that they were so good. I gave them a 5-star Yelp review. It was just
oh, nice.
yeah, they were good humans, very good humans. And but
Five
I'm
hours
still
is
like
nuts to just get it shit off the truck, like not even set it up. That's just truck to floor.
with four men, four large men, and
Have you been hoarding? Do we need to like it's
we
just for
had
like the elevator?
okay.
It's
The
probably how many Blizzard swag boxes did you have?
Oh,
I
true.
purged so much Blizzard swag on Facebook for free for my friends and their friends. Like I shipped out that Hearthstone collectible box, which weighs about like 100 pounds. It weighs 16 pounds or so, but
Which
like
one
I
is
wanted to
that?
make sure all the swag. It was on the website, and I was really hyped about it because it looked like it would be a perfect shadow box to put knickknacks and memories, like ticket stubs and
Mm.
Oh,
Polaroids or whatever. But it's
mhm.
smaller than I expected, and it was $300. It was really expensive, but at least someone got gave it a good home. But no, we only had. If you had to guess, how many boxes do you think they had to move up to my house? or to move my whole house.
So this is just your stuff, like just you in this place?
My stuff
Your
and my
stuff.
partner James.
Okay, so 2 people though. That's a little more reasonable. Okay.
And it's a 2-bedroom and a den condo.
Okay, this is a little better. I thought it was like some 1 bedroom that you got. I'm like, I don't know how you have 5 hours worth of stuff. Like maybe I'm just living Spartan, but I don't think so. Let's see.
Maybe 18 boxes?
We had
Is that a lot?
30 boxes and
Fuck,
4
I was going to
wardrobe
guess
boxes.
30. Oh, I didn't.
And when I
on the
called
nose.
them,
Damn.
yeah, when I called them to ask how many boxes do they think they need for a 2-bedroom, 1 den house, they said between 50 and 80. So I would say we have
80.
less than average.
Nice. You're
And we
minimalist.
didn't have a couch, and we didn't have a lot of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
but
Wait,
yeah,
you didn't
that
have a
was
couch?
No, I left the couch there.
Oh,
We got a
got
new
it. Got it.
couch.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, always a good excuse to upgrade some furniture you haven't really been in love with. Like when I moved down to Blizzard and they were paying for everything, one of the favorite things I expensed was just getting some like college quote unquote junk haulers to come in and just take a bunch of shit I didn't want to deal with anymore. And it doesn't go straight to a landfill. Like I think it gets resold or put back through some channels. But man, the feeling of just having a truck take things out of your life and you don't have to think about them anymore is great.
Yeah, Facebook is actually great for that. I'm also big on I really dislike waste. I don't like to
Sure.
throw away furniture. I like to like some people restore it. I usually buy this is weird, but I buy my furniture secondhand usually, even microfiber, and everyone thinks that's weird. But I think when you look for weeks and you find that perfect piece and you put the love into cleaning it and giving it a home, I'm such a hippie, but so for weeks, I was posting stuff for free on Facebook and Let Go and making sure that everything that I didn't want was rehomed thoughtfully. And so I only ended up having to throw away like 1 garbage can worth of stuff when I moved. Very proud of that.
So are you much closer to the office then? Are you going to be going in on the reg or what's up with that? Because last time I think we met, you had just gone in for some fancy meeting or two.
Yeah, I'm hoping to return. Well, I think we're all set to return in January, I think. But I'm hoping to go in a bit earlier and yeah, just get acclimated. There's still some people in R&D that I haven't met yet, and it would be nice. They do lunch because their cafeteria is still serving food and stuff. So it would be nice to go in once or twice a week to get to know people and see humans again.
Yeah.
You have to wear a mask in LA though, everywhere, and right as well. And so if you do meetings, you have to do the meetings in the meeting room with the mask on, which kind of sucks. So maybe on my meeting light days, it's just hard because it's like the meeting rooms have a camera and a microphone that already doesn't sound great, and then a mask on
Right.
top of you muffles it even worse. So
Wait, even at your desk and such too? All mask
oh,
all
I
the
guess
time?
good point. The other hard part about going into the office is having a PC because there's just chip shortage and all that stuff,
Oh, yeah.
and so there's like a whole system. So yeah,
Mm.
very interesting. I've not had time to play any video games at all. I even as a joke downloaded that indie game. I think it's called Unpacking. But now
I heard about that. I heard that's fun.
I'm sure it is fun. And I'm sure in a week I'll play the shit out of it. I'm a house flipper kind of person. Like I love those games where you organize and clean and
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Is it like a power washing simulator style thing where it's actually just super realistic unpacking? It's
yeah,
what it says
no,
it is?
it's really cute. It's like a 2D game and you get a box and you never know what's going to be in it. And then so you're just taking stuff out and you're given a room and you have to like place every record and every teddy bear and the sheets and all this stuff and hang the curtains and
Oh, wow.
it's very satisfying. It's
This
very
is
fun to
it's
feng
very
shui that.
acclaimed. I had never heard about it before. Oh, what a cute art style too.
Isn't
Yeah, this
it?
this seems
Oh,
blissful. Hmm.
very relaxing game. Yeah.
Yeah, you should do a stream at some point. Or I look forward to hearing your thought. Not like a real unpacking stream, a game unpacking stream. Word. Well, I've played, I think, probably more than enough games for the three of us over the last month. In fact,
Huh.
I feel so out of it because I'm actually so into it, and by it I mean Amazon
New World.
Game Studios' New World. Yeah, yeah. So fuck, dude. Like, I mean, I remember we started talking about this game. I think back in the summer when the closed beta happened, the beta where you had to buy it in July or so, and my initial feeling after playing it for a few hours was like, man, this game is like just good enough that I want it to be really, really good. And that's still sort of how I feel about it. But it is like so compelling that I think I told you that I wasn't really looking for like a second job with an MMO right now. And so I didn't really think it was going to stick very long. I haven't contradicted myself because actually, in the last month since New World's launched, I've spent over 200 hours playing this game, which is more than my job. So New World has actually become my first job, and my job has become my second job. So yeah, we're in the clear. We're in the clear with that. But I don't know how much longer it's gonna last, man. It is like I've just had such insane gamer brain with this thing. It's a great like dopamine driven gathering simulator. There's just constantly objectives sort of in front of your face, but I think I'm finally starting to burn out. We'll see.
So at 200 hours played, what is your gameplay loop like when you log in? What makes you want to log into the game?
Yeah, well, I'm very close to 60, so that's kind of lingering there. But actually, just the last few days, I've kind of stopped really wanting to log in, or I've started to think like, well, why do I want to log into this game? And then when I do, and I wander around for a few minutes in the world, I'm like, oh, that's right, because it's fucking beautiful and like it controls pretty well and it sounds nice. So my gameplay loop though is like, well, the questing experience gets kind of dire towards the end. Everything is hard and meant to probably be done in groups. So you're sort of forced to squeeze your build into something that's like really got a lot of AoE and sustain and stuff because the mob respawn rates are brutal. The quests are a little sparser. The levels feel like they take a bit longer. And so you're really supplementing your experience game with a lot of what are called these town board quests, which are just like small instant kind of crafting material turn-in quests that help to like advance the town for the sake of the company that's running it. And so it creates this like the people who leveled to the end game very quickly in the beginning were mostly abusing like fulfilling town board quests by basically just buying, you know, tons of fish and like light travel rations off the auction house and just spamming these, going from settlement to settlement and doing instant turning quests over and over and over again. So it's like not really fun, but it is if you like to craft up to it. But yeah, so there's that. I'm leaving PvP on all the time, which is finally starting to feel like a real risky proposition. There were a lot of zones and a lot of kind of mid-game where I just didn't feel like there was a bunch of world PvP I was running into. But now that everybody is kind of like clustering around the end levels, if I go out to try to do PvP missions and such, it's like pretty guaranteed that I'll run into somebody. And then it's almost always guaranteed that I'll end up losing because that's just how I roll. Yeah, I don't know. When I get bored, I take breaks to kind of just like chop trees and craft while listening to a podcast. It's like there's fucking always something to do. And so it's really just about like your tolerance for doing it. But
Are you incentivized to have PvP on?
What's up? Yeah, well, sort of. There's a 10% XP gain while leveling up, and that's really it. If you killing players gives you an uncommon amount of weapon mastery to level your weapons up, and you get like some minor kind of currency gains, but they're very slim for what a lot of people describe as like the pain of playing PvP. But truthfully, respawning in this game has like, if you, as long as you're regularly building camps, which are like, you know, cheap to throw up and are kind of your anchored respawn point, like dying is not very steep while you're leveling up. You don't take as much durability loss when you die in PvP. So I personally feel like the perspective of like I can't leave PvP on because it's going to be too inconvenient because they'll just get ganked nonstop is a little overblown. Like I have not been ganked by roaming bands of people nonstop. My server is not the most populated, but I think that's exaggerated. And also you respawn in 2 seconds and you just wade back to whatever you're doing. And also like if you remove the PvP element from this game, I just think there's not a lot to really fall in love with, like beyond the art design and everything. I think it's a very thin experience if you don't have PvP in it, right? It was initially developed as a PvP game, and like the quest design, I think the quests suck. Like it's not that they're incompetent, but I think that they were designed in a short period of time with the tools that existed for this game, and so there's a lot of necessary kind of copy and paste. So like you're not going to find this enchanting Blizzard level questing experience here. And so I think you need the PvP spice on to kind of keep going. I don't know. My heart kind of races every time I see like a red tag, or I'll go prone because people can't see that you're flagged and your nameplate won't show up unless they directly hover over you if you're crouched or prone. And so you can actually really hide in the weeds and let people pass by and then resume what you're doing. And I don't know. I just think it's meant to be played with PvP on. A lot of people want them to incentivize it more, but I guess my stance is kind of like, is having fun and having unexpected gameplay occurrences not enough incentive? Like, to me, just cool shit happens when you're flagged. So that's kind of its own reward. But not everybody feels that way.
I was going to mention that I thought it was really funny that you'd play the game in a way that is somewhat less convenient, given that you have to stop what you're doing and hide sometimes, or that you'll be killed and you have to respawn and presumably run back to where you were or somewhere new to start gathering or whatever, because you don't drop your items or anything. But it is still an inconvenience.
It is.
So, but it's funny because I feel like that is not how most people will play the game. Like, I'm going to do this thing that will cause me, like, it'll actually save me 10% time because it gives you 10% more XP, right? But sometimes, like, emotionally, I'll have to start over and they won't take it because of the perceived. But also, I think it's just funny because you know that the experience will be more fun if you turn it on.
For me,
and so you do.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like playing hardcore in Diablo, right? I feel like in games like this, the thing that causes burnout and the thing that ends up driving me away, and this is probably unique to everybody, but like one, your friends quitting the game, obviously a huge one. But perhaps even more than that is once the treadmill kind of comes into view, especially as a game developer, like I'm counting the minutes until I'm just like, why am I doing this, dude? My limited time on Earth, I'm spending it here. And so for me, keeping... like, it's all ones and zeros. You're not taking any of this loot with you permanently. I felt similarly about grinding softcore in Diablo after a period of time. Like, what you really, the point of playing games, one of the points is that, like, you look back fondly on them. You have experiences, right? And all of the experiences that I end up remembering from these games are the ones where it's like, stuff pops off. Things get crazier. Like, oh, we ran into that guy, or I ducked this dude here. I mean... killing 5 skeletons in a tower for the 80th time is not, like, I'm not taking that away from here. So I just feel like I'm kind of
unexpected.
Yeah, totally. Like, it's just part of the game, really. That's not to say that I don't get pissed when I die, but it's also like, it's always kind of my own fault. You can have an attitude of like, well, I was really kind of running a risk going up to this point to try to, the PvP quests in the game. If you die, you fail all of the ones that you're carrying at once. So it's kind of like if you go out to do them, and they do give you more currency and XP and gold than the regular quests from your faction. But if you go out and do them, you're obviously flagging yourself, and if you die, you lose your progress. So you're kind of like rolling the dice. But it's fun. I don't know. To me, it kind of adds to the immersion, Like, I would play Skyrim with weird hypothermia and camping mods and stuff like that too, just because I feel like it pulls you into the world a bit more. And having to like duck behind a rock and go prone, or like look at somebody down your sights, or feel like, oh shit, hope they didn't see me. Like, all that's just kind of part of what the game has to offer.
Yeah. I'm just curious also, do you feel like you are not in a hurry to get to max level? Maybe because there's no, there's not a raid group waiting for you, or kind of the lack of non-PvP endgame content. Do you feel like that lets you kind of enjoy your experience leveling up more?
Correct. I do not feel super driven to hit 60 to hop on the gear treadmill with this game. The way the gear, I don't know how much you know about the endgame in New World such as it exists.
Let's pretend that I do, but
Okay,
I'm asking for the sake of the audience.
Yes.
Also, I don't know.
Okay, you also don't know. Well, the journey is the point in games like this. I don't have something socially waiting for me at the end of the road. There's not stuff I can do at 60 that's like a whole lot different from what I'm able to do now. Like, if my end game is crafting, and I think that is one of New World's end games, I could already be crafting. Like, there's nothing, I could equip different stuff at 60, but yes, there's no raid waiting for me there. There are 2 dungeons, but They're very difficult to spam because they require consumable kind of attunement keys that are really onerous to craft. And anywho, there's nothing about the end game in New World such as it exists right now that makes me feel like, God, I got to get there. Like, what I've been doing is what I will continue to do. And that will continue to be, unfortunately, some of the best stuff of it. So hitting 60 kind of feels like incidental if I'm not needing to be there to participate in group PvP battles with a company of mine, and I have ambitions for all of that. Because I'm playing with like 4 or 5 friends. We don't run anything on our server. I've been like listening to a lot of chatter over in the New World, Chanter from Z Winter, who seems really freaking advanced at all this. And his endgame experience is vastly different from the one that I think I'll be having. And I could see why someone like him would want to rush. But yeah, I don't know. Anyways, at this point, I'm kind of like hate leveling for the last level and a half. Like, I kind of just want to like get off the having to roam around and do quest treadmill because these just really are not good. The walking is starting to fatigue me. A lot of the things that I enjoyed on the way up just like are starting to wear kind of thin. So
what's going to change once like you're max level and now you're part of your company and all of that? And
for me,
what is the end game loop? Because I have heard there's been a bunch of like drama between like some companies dominating servers or whatever.
Well, the PvE end game loop, there's the crafting one, which is just endlessly grind the crafting interface. You can work the auction house, you could do all that. If you're just trying to get the best gear, it's kind of like this degenerate endless mob grinding at a few handful of elite spots, and it's got kind of like a Destiny 2 style system that they call watermarking, where for any given equipment slot that you have, the higher a drop you've ever experienced in that slot, the higher the sort of like threshold of gear you can obtain as drops in that slot. So you're really encouraged to just continually kill mobs to kind of raise your own invisible sort of like gear drop number so that better gear can continue to drop. So it's not very fun. I don't think. I haven't done any of it yet. What kind of short circuits that, and like this is part of the larger discussion of like the state of New World, is that a ton of the way gear works even is just bugged to hell. A lot of perks and abilities that say they do a thing don't do a thing. People are discovering that this makes, for example, armor you can buy from your faction quartermaster basically best in slot because it's got bugged perks on it. And so once you start to kind of see through the illusion of this gear chase, because a lot of it's just non-functional, I think it makes it easier to then look at like the way you were going to get that gear and be like, well, this is pointless too, like, so then you really have to step back and be like, well, what am I continuing to do in this world? And for me, it will be just playing with friends, basically, helping them through things, wait and see if they get 60. Like I might take a break, I might come back. But that's all me. The PvP endgame is its own beast. You can easily coordinate with members of your company or your faction to just be trying to flip territories, start wars, boot other companies out, really just run your server, which can enrich you in terms of gold and increase like quality of life features in the game. And it's also just great drama, right? So
yeah.
I think there's a ton to do in New World on that political front, which makes sense because it seems like really where the game started. And that's where all the sandboxy aspects are. It's the on-rails theme parky aspects that just are a little underbaked, I think, at max level,
So what do you think the best thing about the game is? Like, how do you compare it to, say, a WoW expansion in terms of, that whole kind of experience of everyone's leveling and it's all this new stuff to figure out and min-maxing gear and, meeting new people? What is like the main, like, what are some sticky things of the game you think
so
you're going to look for in future games or whatever?
The persistent non-sharded community, I think, is really exciting. Actually encountering people in the world, starting to recognize the same names in global chat and stuff all the time. That's exciting. Knowing that, if you see something and somebody else is near you, they're seeing it too, and you can, get on voice IP and whatever. Like, I walked into a PvP quest area the other morning to try to knock one out. And as soon as I got up there was another dude there. From my faction, the Syndicate, which is really rare on my server, and over voice IP, he immediately asks, "Are you PvP?" And he asked because I had my healing staff out, and if I was unflagged and he was flagged, I wouldn't have been able to heal him at all. And he wanted to know if like I had his back in case somebody else was around. And I'm like, yeah, I'm flagged. He's like, all right, cool. There was a dude over here a few minutes ago, but I'm like, all right, well, we'll keep an eye. And it's just those little moments of like micro engagement are so fucking fun. Like, as it turns out, the people, are kind of the point. But
I have to ask then. One of my metrics for a successful MMO is, have you made a friend yet? Like a single friend that you talk to, that you met in game, that you either play with regularly or talk about real life stuff with?
Not yet. I have some randos I've added to my friends list after doing a dungeon run. The group environment in dungeons has been very friendly so far. Again, my experience with voice over IP is that it's actually making people less shitty than more shitty, and I'm 100% for it. But like, I have some that I can maybe banter with in global, but nobody that like I'm inviting to my wedding or anything yet. I'm not there. But some of that is like, I'm not a solo traveler entirely in this game, right? Like, it's like, if you travel around by yourself, you'll make tons of friends. Anywhere you go, you'll never be alone. But if you go with even just one other person, your whole mindset and your openness is different. So having some of my friends on the server, I think, is just like, and getting to be on a Discord with voice, like I'm keeping one foot in my social past, I'm not sure that I'm like at the ideal age to be making a lot of new friends in here. But
What about, the company or guild that you're in? It's like with your real life friends already, right?
yeah.
You guys invite any new people to it? Like rando people?
No,
or
we haven't yet. I know. I honestly like. Yeah, I've never had a guild like yours, not since vanilla, one that's persistent and spans multiple games like that. I mean, Notorious is really like I've hung out in that Discord a bit. Y'all are like a family at this point. I took a handful of my kind of chosen family from my WoW guild back in 2005. Like 6 or 7 people from then are some of my best friends now and still are, but not an entire guild. Only, 6 or 7 people. And that's who I play with. Mostly.
Gotcha. Because usually, every expansion or every game that we usually play, and if we start it with some of our guildmates or friends group, it depends on the game, but usually it's just you kind of want to add a couple more people that you find or whatever. You end up like have some tag-alongs. So I was curious if you just happen to invite anybody. Maybe that's kind of what Candace is talking about. Like,
I mean, I haven't. Yeah.
Okay.
But I have some friends that have. That's sometimes they'll scoop somebody up and it'll be like, oh, yo, Rage is getting in Discord. Yeah, he's chill. I'll just, that's happened, I don't think in this game so far, but I really have been going harder than any of my friends on this game so far. So like they wouldn't be in that spot yet, but they might. I have made some buddies. Like I'll say this. I've hopped on public Discord servers for my faction and gotten in voice comms with like 18 randos there to help coordinate like holding a fort and doing stuff. So that was just like full, like I'm not chatting with all those people a ton afterwards, but sort of. Like I know them because there's global faction chat all the times and it's a small server. So it's been more open and social than most games I've played in the last while. And again, I think that persistence is just key. And being kind of the underdogs on our faction, I think has really helped it too. God, I have talked so fucking much about this game, but I clearly had a lot bottled up. Anyways, though, it's just like, I've been saying this since the beginning and even watching Asmund streaming it way back in like the alpha in 2020. Like the sound design is just carrying this fucking game. It's so good. And it's not just good academically, like, oh, I appreciate it. I think that it's actually good in like a really psychologically insidious way in that like the dopamine loop of this game is fucking so tuned. Interacting with literally everything and just having these satisfying little sounds and some of the resource randomly popping into your inventory with this like ting, it's just like, I can go into lab rat mode in this game so easily. And like, I don't do that with games often anymore, but like as just like a walking and gathering nature simulator, This game is fucking crushing it. It's just like just chilling out in the world feels so good.
Yeah. I've noticed I noticed their concurrency is pretty decent still. It hasn't like dived or anything. It's gone
No,
down a little
dude.
bit since the release, but not that
It's
much.
still a
So
couple 100,000 people like regularly, and it's wild
yeah.
because people are
That's great.
spamming dead game because okay, so the dirty part of it, as you've probably seen in all the articles that have come out, is that like I feel like this game must just have the most spaghetti code base imaginable. Like game dev talk here. They seemingly cannot fix a thing without like in the last 4 patches that they've had a couple of major features. These major corruption portals, a PVE event, Outpost Rush, which was a battleground, server transfers, and there was one other thing. They will issue a fix and then have to recall the fix like the day after, and this has happened reliably. And it just everything in the game to me really smacks of a difficult to maintain code base. I think they are probably just backlogged to hell with this work. They did that really strong design direction pivot midway through. I just don't know if they're ever going to climb out from underneath the tech debt of this. Oh, here's my like tinfoil hat theory. And like, I don't know anybody directly at AGS, but I'm thinking that, okay, after the pivot, which would have entailed working really, really hard for the last year to just crank out PvE content, which they did do. Admirably, they've got a lot in there. It's a really good rebrand. But that probably really fucking exhausted people. I do tend to know that Amazon has reasonable churn rate. I suspect a lot of people inside knew how buggy this was and were like, man, I just don't know how this is going to land. Like it's going to get skewered for bugs. And then what happened is people actually got fucking obsessed with it, and it hit so big that they have really they're forced to keep the lights on, and they are hiring so hard. But I imagine that they're just really behind the ball because what if a bunch of people left on ship like after a long period of crunching to put PvE in? Like that's not out of the question. And then you've got new people coming on to this Lumberyard engine that I think they've already said like they're kind of sunsetting in terms of using it as a game engine. Like this is going to be the Lumberyard project from what I understand now, And I just think that like, I don't know, it has all the markings of having been difficult to work with. MMOs have bugs, but like the bugs in New World are really bad. And yet I keep wanting to play. Like, anywho, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome.
Yeah. And they there's a lot of work to do, but it is cool. You're right that it has sustained to this degree so far.
Have they announced any like major patches or updates that are coming out?
That's the thing. And Candace kind of like alluded to this when we were talking about do we think they know what their release cadence is a couple weeks ago. Like there still hasn't been a post-launch roadmap of any sort. Besides, we're going to fix server transfers. We're going to develop them because we know you need them. That's the only sort of like advance feature that they've come out and talked about. I know that there have been some data mined and new weapons and stuff like that, but that also, I think that kind of plays into my theory of like, it could have been reasonable to expect this game to tank fast and then not have to worry about any of this shit. Like it's a massive investment, but I think that like all MMOs, it's just a huge gamble. People get FOMO and burnout. And so I don't know, but my sense is that they're probably scrambling in there. They have things they'd like to do, but I think they're now realizing like, wow, we really need to do these and more and fast because like we have everybody on the hook. They're suffering from success is probably the situation I think they're in.
Yeah. I was having this conversation with another founder actually, and it's like that's the biggest killer of these games. You get basically choked by success. This happened with Among Us. Among Us comes out, it's like hugely popular. And then people just kind of stop playing it, just drift out of it because there's no real updates, right? They had a team of 4 people or something like that. So you really have to consider like the live ops kind of part of the game after it comes out, right? Like, what are you doing a month, a week after? Like, Candace and I, right, and you, Luca, the same thing. We all came from game teams that had really planned out live ops for after the game came out. Like, I remember on HOTS, they knew what was coming out a year from a year in the future, right? It was all kind of planned out. Same thing with WoW.
Yeah.
You know, all there's patches and expansions planned even when an expansion comes out. So it's kind of unrealistic for these games to really have that all planned out and all that kind of in motion, because you don't know if the game is going to be successful until it until it is, until
Right.
it comes out. So you're not going to spend all this money and effort and energy planning out the future live ops plan. But it could definitely kill a game. Same thing with Valheim, right? Valheim comes out, hugely popular. Everyone's like, what the hell? Why aren't you
Mm-hmm.
updating it? Where's the new biome? Where's the new world? Where's Valheim 2? Whatever. And they had a team of what, 8 people or something like that. And then they came out with a Hearth and Home update, a couple months ago. And if you look at the concurrency, at least on Steam, it was just a tiny little blip of people who came back to try that update. And ultimately, the update was just kind of small. It was just like some new food and things like that. Totally fine for that team they have and all of that. But it's, again, the expectations on a game once it's really popular and trying to deliver on that so hard.
Well, and as we've said too, it's complicated for MMOs because you need to believe that an MMO is going to continue to be around to want to keep investing your time in it, And you also need everybody else to be collectively bought into the same degree, because you're going to need people in this world that you want to continue to persist in. So like you really do need to feed players a line about what's coming next and keep people excited, because it's like the stock market or something, right? As soon as sentiment changes and people start running for the exits, it can become a ghost town overnight, and like you just really can't play it enjoyably knowing that things are dead. You can play Valheim offline or with 3 of your buddies at a LAN party, even if like the greater internet has completely turned on it, and the FOMO kind of locusts have devoured what's there. Like, but an MMO is like not. It needs people to stick around to function properly, and so yeah, I don't know. That's really where my head's at with this. Is like, I just am curious about how they're going to start talking about roadmaps and stuff. And I think until they do that, like that's going to be the first one of their first real tests. I think now that they're at this stage.
Yeah, like even Fortnite too. Fortnite, they have an intense schedule of updates and new skins and new battle pass and all these additional things they're adding. And so much of it isn't even in-house at Epic. It's like outsourced out and everything. And even at those like third-party groups, they just get drained. They get burned out quick because that content schedule is brutal, right? But it's like you kind of need that, otherwise the game will just kind of die in the vine.
Well, I don't think this is going to die on the vine. I mean, Bezos came out and talked about how proud he was, and I don't think he's going to be content with just initial sales numbers. Like, they're not lacking for sources.
Well, Bezos doesn't even work at Amazon anymore.
No. But I know it's difficult to not just keep kind of invoking. And that's the other thing, though, is like, how many people know the name of the New World game director or can name a designer on New World? Or know who the president of, I mean, you can, obviously, but like, they're very, mysterious isn't the word, but it's kind of kept really just behind the scenes. Like, the only avenue for customer support through the game besides the forums is like going basically through the Amazon website and ending up, in the same queue system that people who can't, get their Prime deliveries schedule them on time. So it's like, there's not a lot of like kind of AGS brand ownership and faces to put with this stuff yet. So that's why I think Bezos just nonstop comes up, because it's just like, how many people can name a bunch of Amazon game developers, Dude, so the other thing is, like I was talking about with my speculative discussion of like what the code base must look like, is like, if you thought that this game might not stick around for a really long time, because you're just like, we just don't know, we're going to have to see, you can kind of keep kicking the can on refactoring or fixing some things. But if it suddenly is like the 3rd most popular game on Steam for a solid month plus, it's time to dig in and start refactoring some of that fucking code that like you were maybe hoping you didn't have to see again, Like, this game, from what I understand, has had some really sinister, long-lasting bugs that people had reported like over 2 years ago that are still there. And it's like, I wonder if they'll ever get fixed, you know? Like
2 years ago, you mean in like the alpha or?
yeah, exactly. It's like
Oh, wow.
every thread that comes up about somebody being like, "Hey, X system within the game is fundamentally broken and that like text is misleading. If you take this talent point, one of your abilities just stops doing damage. It's not documented anywhere, but we figured it out." And someone will be like, "Yeah, we knew about this in alpha. We reported it." And so it's kind of disheartening to hear about stuff living that long. It makes me feel like, what are the odds that anything that is like that sticky to have been around that long must be a pain in the ass to deal with, right? Like, because if it were quick, you would just bang it out. So just imagine somebody being like, look, we need to fix that thing finally, you know? Like, I can't imagine what a 2-year-old bug must look like to deal with if you've been putting it off for that long. So who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, I guarantee probably someone left or something who created the bug and it's got passed around, or
I mean,
maybe it was
maybe.
something with the engine because it's in Lumberyard, right? So
That's what I'm saying also. Like, you can't hire people that'll come on with tons of domain expertise and just bang this stuff out because, yeah, I'm sure Star Citizen runs into the same problems if it churns. I don't know what it's like at
Mhm.
Cloud Imperium, but
Well, I
oh
wanted
my
to
goodness.
mention we got 10 minutes left in this fever dream of New
I'm
World
sorry.
discussion. No, it's totally fine. It's really interesting. So, but if anyone wants to bring something up or talk about something, go ahead and raise your hand. But
Yeah,
is
please,
there any
please.
gaming news this week?
Gosh. Besides
What I saw there was like a
Naruto,
Pokemon organization, RTS. Did you see that today?
I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Candace, any
Um,
gaming news cross your desk? Like, if we don't know anything about it, probably none of us really care that much about it, but anything stick out?
Not really. I mean, usually I get a lot of those from off-topic channels at work, but I haven't been at work the last couple days, so my
yeah.
news source is kind
Mm,
of dry. I've been so busy, I haven't been really like doom
Did you guys
scrolling
see
Twitter.
Dune?
I haven't yet.
You need to
Mm.
watch
I
Dune. I've
know
seen
you're
it 4
obsessed.
times already. It's
Oh
so
my
I
good.
was
God. Holy shit. That's great,
Not in
dude.
the theaters. I watch HBO Max, but
I was told that I should see it for the first time in an IMAX theater, and I don't know where is one near Playa Vista. But so I kind of wanted to hold my first viewing for that, and then my second viewing will be like I'm comfy, I'm on my couch, I'm probably pretty high, and I have a lot of snacks.
Mm-hmm.
that was my situation. So, yeah, and it was great.
Yeah, I look forward to getting to it soon. I've really just been sidelining. I mean, given my hour count, you can infer this, but everything non essential to play that game. So I'm kind of coming up for air.
I
My
noticed
protagonist,
Reynolds did ask, "What do you think about?" He says, "The only thing on my mind lately is an idea for how they could do WoW 2.0 in a new worldish kind of way." What do you think about that, Luca? Like, what would you, if you were doing WoW 2 and you after you played New World, what elements would you take from that?
Well, I think what people probably mean by that, without maybe even knowing that they mean by that, is
Hmm.
maybe they want to see the combat system adapted, improved, made better, maybe brought over in a WoW. I like if I try to think about, oh, WoW is so much better or New World's so much better than WoW, and if I don't clarify it, the things I'm going to assume is that this person probably likes action combat better because that's like a really primary differentiator. It's certainly not winning on like the PVE front, right? And I think I think production values overall, it's not that WoW doesn't have them, but New World is just fucking gorgeous, man. Like I don't know how they did it, and it makes you wonder that like why we won't see more in Lumberyard. But it's like depth of field everywhere. I don't know. It's just a very very immersive world, and I think, and this is also a reach, but it doesn't. New World is a lot of like what happens along the way, and WoW for me has become incredibly focused on just doing what the waypoint marker is telling me to do. Like those exist in New World, but so much shit seems like it happens along the way, and there's a lot of time in world that I don't know. Maybe
Hmm.
people are wanting a little bit more of that, and they don't know how to express it. But I mean, well, what do you two think? And Reynolds is up here now, so from what you've seen, what do you think would be possible for the space to adapt? Like, is there no going back from action combat? You know what I mean? Like, Candace can't say anything about any of this stuff. Like, she can't even talk about any of this. But
Well, I think if I can say, I think you hit the
Yeah.
nail on the head with a couple of stuff. The combat certainly is more satisfying. I think if you were to compare the two, it's a little more limited in the abilities, but just I think you also hit a little bit the world. Whether it's the graphics, I don't know that it is, but something about it, it has like a shadow of, or kind of a spark of that same thing that you felt when you first played WoW, where it
Yes.
felt like a big world and there was stuff there that you wanted to explore and like you wanted to see that. But my comment, if I can interject here,
Please.
is that did you play Warcraft 2? Are you guys familiar with the classic Warcraft?
Oh, yes.
Okay, love that game. So my idea, not only touching on what you said about just mechanics and systems, because WoW really does feel like a directed kind of storyline that you have really no say in. And I think maybe that's what's refreshing about New World is that the player has a lot of say in what's happening in the world, whereas in WoW, the player has very little say in what's happening in the world. And it makes you feel less a part of it. The reason I bring up Warcraft 2 and maybe just earlier Warcraft lore in general is the whole story of Warcraft, as I've been thinking about it, is the story of orcs from another world and humans from this world, and this magic that opened these rifts between these worlds. But before these worlds were connected to one another through, the dark portal, they had their own politics. I've been reading about the kingdoms of Erethdor and all these other, the human kingdoms that existed before orcs kind of got themselves involved. And the orcs also had their own clans and they were kind of at each other's throats. And in a similar way that everyone in New World is just a human in a different faction, I feel like World of Warcraft could really go back to its roots and tap into the clans and the human kingdoms and have almost two parallel worlds that exist depending on the faction that you pick, with dynamic events that open dark portals and have some way for the players to kind of cross over and have that interaction with one another and then close them again and kind of really tie it into what makes the core of Warcraft, which is the story of the orcs and humans and the war.
It has
Yeah.
gotten, that is
Dude,
a
I love
criticism of
that.
WoW these days, right? That it's gotten
Yeah.
very, very fantastical and just too far out there, maybe.
Right. So almost a hard reset, I think, would be a really fresh take back to its roots. And then you could tie in a lot of this New World stuff where the world is a little more dynamic and you're playing humans and, night elves and, these people on Azeroth that have their little squabbles with one another. And then you're playing on this other one. But then at some point, those lines cross and now you probably have to make some alliances with some factions that usually you don't like because now there's the horde in your land.
Yeah, I think that's such a great pitch, actually. I think a lot of Warcraft fans would be excited for something like that. Go back to the basics, right?
Yeah,
I like that.
I've been on my mind
one thing
lately.
I that kind of got lost in WoW is just not that's that big of a problem, but there's just not that many like say castles or kingdoms. Of course, there was like Lordaeron and stuff, but you don't really like there's really just one Stormwind, right? That would be really cool to see. Is just basically the human civilization more in the world, right? Maybe something more grounded if it's just orcs and humans or something like that.
Yeah, I think kind of I think some people refer to it as like low fantasy, but
Right.
kind of the Game of Thrones world where it's really very political. And New World kind of has that where you're making factions and you kind of just don't like the other faction because they'll kill you in PvP or they took over your town and upped your tax rates or whatever. You have some way to make your experience suck. Doesn't end your game experience, doesn't completely ruin it, but it makes it worse and you kind of immediately like cheer for your own team and hope the others fail, right?
I mean, I don't know how I didn't land on it before, but I think one of the key differentiators is that the people in New World feel consequential. The other players in the game feel real. I'm always aware of them. And You're right. Even with kind of a thin lore justification of why I'm supposed to hate them, like the backstory of the Syndicate versus the Covenant is like not, it's a handful of lines of text or whatever. Players are having a very real impact on each other via politics, via being flagged for PvP and all those machinations, being persistent. It really has put that element back into an MMO. And like, I don't think about other players really in WoW. I don't mean selfishly.
Right.
I just mean
You
that
don't
like
have to.
I'm on my own grind. Yeah, I don't have to. I just like queue my own stuff. I farm my own stuff. In the quests, I'm the main hero. So, Jaina's riding with me, no big deal. And I don't really think about like the fact that all these other folks are doing things. But in New World, like I constantly am like, oh, that's a person there. It's kind of, that came back for one reason or another. And I think that like, yeah.
And the voice chat makes it very human for those who choose to engage in it. The fact that you can have that on and that everyone you're running across is a human. And something about that, it doesn't, everyone doesn't feel like an NPC going from point A to point B or whatever.
I mean, Chris has talked about this, the players are the content. Like, I think in some ways, New World has sort of delivered on that. And like I've said before, I didn't realize how much I was sort of missing it from my MMO experience anymore because I've really mostly only played WoW. But
I just think there's a lot to learn from a lot of the survival crafting games where it's basically just as simple and it's just attached to the world and it's just really kind of just crafting. It's not kind of like all these layered systems with directed things you have to do and all these kind of like a schedule that the player has to do, right? It's just, so I definitely think, like the game you're kind of talking about here, like if you merge WoW 2 with New World, and New World learned that too, right? Which is why the game is just all about running in the world, like you kind of said, Luca, just kind of like this kind of almost just like world simulator kind of thing of just running around and gathering and killing people and stuff. So, definitely things that we're thinking about too for our game. So.
Yes.
Well, thanks for letting me make my pitch.
Oh yeah, thanks for
coming up. I was taking notes. So
there you go. You'll see your ideas credited, of course, in the new Notorious Studios game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'll expect my paycheck.
Yeah, yeah. We've got Toki, my friend Zach, up on the stage. What's going on?
Yeah, what's up? So I was just thinking when you were mentioning there was a couple times when the back to basics was sort of mentioned, and just from like my view as someone who started at the pinnacle of all MMOs, which everybody's been trying to get back to and no one has, Ultima Online, putting people back into the world and giving that world life to where you can actually have the perception of a meaningful impact, I think is one of the greatest things about New World. And what kind of hooked me that I resisted for like a solid week or so. And I was like, no, I didn't like the beta. Action combat sucks, whatever, it looks fine, but like not for me. But like you said, I mean, having that feeling of being able to impact the world and players being not just mindless bot. Well, some are the phishing bots, but the general population that you run across just actually being when you're PvP flagged, at least a potential obstacle or a potential friend when you're in need is just something that's very interesting, and layering on top of that the sort of faction wars, which you also did well with Town Wars, just in a bit of a different way, and having it be consequential. As when you're on a server with no faction control, Azoth to travel around is insanely
it fucking
expensive.
Sucks. Yeah, I've been behind the ball on that all the way to 60. Like it's so brutal.
I was complaining earlier because it cost me 97 on my server to go from Weaver's Fen to Cutlass Keys.
Yeah,
and one of our friends who was on a similar situation as Luca was like, that cost me like 250 or 300 to go there.
You're getting like discount round trip tickets, fucking business class. And I will end up being like, well, if I want to do this, I'm going to have to run and just not doing it. But it also, and like, so that sucks. That clearly means that like running eventually becomes a bit of a pain point. But it also means that like when people start talking about like, man, Syndicate really just needs to flip X territory, you just feel like, fuck yes, they do, because I am so tired of like not having Azoth to do anything, and like the Covenant can't just sit there forever. Like I'm tired of being inconvenienced. Kick these tyrants out of here. It's like, so.
But it's
I don't know.
It's an interesting thing when you're talking about the design and sort of going back to basics, because it really is, the original iteration that people revolted against was the one that had full loop PvP, right? Which I think is why the crafting is so strong, at least in my opinion.
Yep.
Because it's built around a world where stuff breaks. Like Chris said, like, we've both played Rust. I assume that most people at this point have probably played Rust in some fashion or something like it. And if the crafting system wasn't good, the game would be horrendous. There'd be no point, right? And so I'm curious if you see a return to what we'll call basics, or a return to a player-driven story and player-driven games. I mean, not even story, but player-driven consequences inside of games. If that's sort of making a comeback like Bell Bottoms did, like, is that something that we're coming back to? Is it something that the theme park has grown stale, and you've all been to Disney several times, and it's just like, who gives a shit? Now we want something where we can have a dynamic interaction with another person, because it's always going to be more interesting, And one thing I'll just say about the player housing is the only thing I don't want to say disappointed, because that's not the accurate word. The only thing I wish that may have happened, was highly unlikely, obviously, is like player housing, being able to have an interaction with it in the world. But because with 2,000 people, real estate might not be that big of a thing that you could make, like, you couldn't make it happen. Kind of iffy, but in Ultima, you could enter another person's house stealthed and take all their stuff and leave.
Oh, gee, I'm sure you never did that.
I would never. I was an honorable 13-year-old who was waking up at 12 o'clock at night when his parents were asleep, to go downstairs and dial in and play until 4 o'clock in the morning. But no, where you have that player housing, which creates a completely different world of interactions that you can have. You can play like capture the flag between your two houses by putting stuff into chests and whatnot, and the potential is kind of there, but I don't know if it would be that. That was very long-winded way, but
yeah. Chris, I mean, I would bet that you do think that style of game and that desire is there, because you're pretty much staking your livelihood on it. But maybe you could answer Zach's question. Do you think people are interested in going back towards that sort of consequential player-driven gameplay?
I mean, I think so. I think if you look at kind of the games that are popular, that are resonating, that are part of the zeitgeist, part of the trends right now, it's definitely a lot of aspects that you're talking about. More, it's about the player's story, more about just kind of simple, back to basics sort of thing, more about, like, say, immersion with the world and things like that. A lot of the reasons why you're seeing more of these kind of games is the maturity of the engines, solutions, kind of like this thing called mega scans, which you could basically just kind of plop in environments and trees and grass so easily to make bigger worlds, or more kind of more open world sort of experiences. So yeah, no, I totally agree. I think and I'm sort of biased with this too, because some of these elements are what we're looking at and trying to do. So
I think that, like, I mean, I've spent a ton of time on the New World subreddit, right? There are lots of folks that are lamenting that the original PvP design is gone and that they had to make this turn. And then there are lots of other people being like, I would never want to play in a game like that, but I'm here in this game. And they have a point, and I don't think that their pivot to adding all these theme park elements was wrong to do, but I do think that in the longer term, when people walk away from New World and think back about like what it sort of did well, they'll sort of be forced to acknowledge that the strongest elements of it and the things maybe they sneakily enjoyed the most were the things that were part of the original design that they had to pivot away from. And I think that, like, if you told people that that was the style of game they were going to like, they'd probably be like, what? No way. but New World is kind of like,
It felt like they spent a lot of energy towards the end to add those dungeons in there.
they did.
And
Yeah.
from what I hear, they're not really that great, or really kind of one of the best parts about the game. So
They're fine. Like the encounter
that's
design
that's what everyone
yeah,
says. They're
yeah.
just like, it's okay,
They're cool.
And
I mean,
so, yeah,
they're I'll tell you, they're cool because like when it's working properly and fluidly, New World's combat feels cool, and using your abilities sounds fucking awesome, and seeing the numbers go. So like you don't mind mashing through dungeons even if like the encounters aren't the most technical, because wielding your weapon feels dope. This isn't always the case. Like I think that there are a lot of unique problems to the dungeon experience that New World runs into, because there's like player collision, right? If I'm fighting a boss that has a gigantic sword cleave in front of him and he pulls the sword back a ton, and I have to be really concerned about positioning. If our group is melee heavy and we're all in there behind him, like we literally can't all fit on Thorpe's butt to try to damage him at the same time. So it's like somebody has to, because we're pushing each other out of the way. And that can be kind of frustrating. And it is frustrating, but then there were times where I'm like, this just means that like the meta of bringing people to dungeons is like, even if, Great Axe Hatchet or I don't know, something is the best DPS, you're not going to take 3 people like this because you're not going to fit everyone there. And I'm like, that doesn't seem that bad to me, I thought, oh, this seems like a bad consequence. And I'm like, no, I think there's like a way to spin this. But anywho, the encounter design from what I've experienced is like pretty competent. The first dungeon's sort of mindless, but it's good for what that engine does, right? Like they've used the pieces of the engine pretty well, and it wasn't designed for these sorts of dungeons, right? So I definitely have to give them props there. They're fun to do, but anywho, we could rant on forever. I don't think we want to do a 2-hour New World episode.
yeah. We try to wrap it up.
Let's wrap it. Yeah, let's wrap it before I go off more. Unless there are any more hands, but I don't think so. Okay. Well, thanks for sticking with us. We hope to be back next week. Until then, leave your questions and comments and everything in the Discord. We'll just keep chatting with you and gaming away. And as always, Chris.
Later, gamers. Oh, happy Halloween, too. That's going to be Halloween weekend.
Happy Halloween.
We're going to have to, Luca, we're going to have to see your costume. I want to see it.
Yes. All right, I'll get pictures of my costume. And yours, too, if you make one with your nieces and nephews.
I might, yeah.
Do it.
All right.
Later, guys.